Now, the Sixth Doctor on screen didn't particularly have many stories. He only had about, 9, 10, 11? And, that's pretty sad. But, with the help of comics, books, and Big Finish audio dramas, the Sixth Doctor has had a long, lengthy life, with loads and loads and loads of adventures. But what order do they all take place in? Just to let you know what has happened throughout the Sixth Doctor's life, I am here to tell you what the Sixth Doctor's timeline is like. Been wearing this this hoodie for the past few videos now. I swear I own more clothes. I just don't have a fashion sense. So, the Sixth Doctor's timeline is a pretty interesting one. I've been wanting to do a timeline for a while, like a proper timeline video for a while, but other videos got in the way. And plus the fact that the 12th Doctor one was kind of rubbish also made it not really good. But as it's Colin Month, I feel like I might as well do this, seeing as how back in McCoy Month I did the very first one, and it's got over 3,000 views. Nice one. First of all, there's going to be a bit of a new format. To my left, there shall be scrolling text. Now, scrolling text will be of this sort of form. Basically, it's to tell you which stories fit into the sort of era I'm talking about, because I'm going to have a generalization of an era, like Doctor's time with a companion, arcs they may go through. It's probably going to be more prevalent during when I'm talking about Big Finish, but oh well. It's to tell you all the stories that fit. I'm going to have abbreviations right before the actual title of a story, and that's to show you what sort of range the story is in, whether it be in the Big Finish monthly range, whether it's a TV story, whether it's part of something like the Companion Chronicles or something, or the Short Trips. Well, the list of abbreviations that will be used in this video are going to be scrolling right now. So, here's a spoiler warning for, like, all the stories I'm gonna spoil here. So, you've been warned. So let's get started. So at the end of the Caves of Androzani, the 5th Doctor kinda sorta died. So, therefore, the 6th Doctor was born. Now, his predecessor wasn't anything like what the 6th Doctor's like. The 6th Doctor was brash and arrogant, and as we could see in the Twin Dilemma, alien spy! He wasn't the nicest of people. This kicks off Season 22. I know Twin Dilemma's in Season 21, but Attack of the Cybermen is set right after the Twin Dilemma, as the Doctor's still in his post-regenerative state. So the rest of Season 22 happens, the Doctor's still kind of a jerk, but yeah, all these stories happen during Season 22. I bet you didn't even know that Davros is set in Season 22, or that something like The Year of the Pig is set during Season 22. Well, now you know. Now, Revelation of the Daleks, as I pointed out in my Lost Season 23 video, leads into the Nightmare Fair, as the 6th Doctor is about to say, "I'll take you to Blackpool." Now, obviously he didn't finish what he said, but the intention was that the Lost Season 23 would be the actual season 23, but sadly that didn't come to fruition until Big Finish and Target published audio versions of these. Well, not audio versions. Target published book versions of these. I've also decided to lump the other Sixth Doctor Lost stories in here. For instance, like the first Sontarans and all that. All of those are in here because I think it makes the most sense. So now we go into the DWM comics, and we meet the Doctor and Perry are traveling, and they meet a new companion in the story, the Shapeshifters. That's right, it's Frobisher, the big talking bird, Detective Penguin Man, Frobisher. Best companion. So yeah, Frobisher does have quite a few DWM stories. He's also a companion to the 7th Doctor in DWM, but we're not going to talk about that because this is a 6th Doctor video. So after that, Frobisher just leaves. Now we're back with just Perry on her own, but this is Perry a bit more matured. So I've put this after Frobisher, as she's probably going to be a few years older, and this is going to be right before Trial, and there are Perry stories before Trial where Frobisher isn't in it, because Frobisher wasn't in Trial of the Time Lord, obviously. So there you go. There's been a lot of them. Mainly Big Finish. Anyway, speaking of Trial of the Time Lord, I've dedicated a whole section of my spreadsheet, which I've got a spreadsheet, by the way, link to the current version down in the description below. So I've started this out with the Mysterious Planet, as the Mysterious Planet is set quite a bit before Trial of the Time Lord, and when I say Mysterious Planet or Mind Warp or Terror of the Vervoids or Ultimate Foe, I'm referring to the main stories of those segments, not the actual Trial portion of it itself. I will refer to the Trial portion as the Trial of the Time Lord itself, so there we go. Mysterious Planet happens, then a little bit after, Mind Warp happens, and we'll get back to the whole what happens to Perry, but what we see in Mind Warp is that
it already has. Welcome to your new body. You killed Perry?
Then we actually get into the trial itself, because the actual trial portion is set right after Mind Warp, because that's the adventure that the Doctor's currently on. And right after the trial, we've got the Ultimate Foe. That's a portion set exclusively within, like, the current moment. And yeah, that's the Doctor's first proper adventure with Mel, seeing as how Mel travelled back in time in the Doctor's time stream to visit him during his trial to help out. So then, in The Wrong Doctors, TV 6th Doctor drops Mel off at Pete's Pottage. We'll get back to The Wrong Doctors later when we're talking about Big Finish 6th Doctor. And then other stories here, like stories explicitly set right after Trial. Also in the Trial of the Time Lord period, the 6th Doctor meets a new companion called Grant Markham, who proceeds to be erased from time or something. And some short stories are here. Some of them were set explicitly after Trial, and I decided to lump all of the short trips in here, because why not? Then we've got Frobisher and Doctor travelling together with no one else, no Perry. I've decided to place this here because the Doctor in the Maltese Penguin says he's lonely, and that's the first story I've put here, because, well, the Doctor's lonely, and this is like probably the earliest time the Doctor and Frobisher haven't been together, and then they start travelling together right after that. And it's a bit timey-wimey, because the Holy Terror is after this. Well, there's a book with Frobisher in it, a past Doctor adventure that was released before the Holy Terror, but Holy Terror was written by Robert Sherman for Big Finish, and that was released 2 years before the Maltese Penguin, but I've put after simply because it makes more chronological sense. And I've put other stories set around here, and just more, and If a story isn't explicitly set around here, it's because it's more tonally accurate to the comics, and the Doctor's not traveling with Perry, so therefore it makes most sense to put here. Now we've got the majority of stories where the Sixth Doctor's travel alone in Big Finish. The only one notable to speak about in terms of like the Doctor's chronology is Perry and the Piscon Paradox. Now I said I'd get back to Perry, and basically there's versions of Perry where she got like her Kiv's brain in her. There's where she's living happily ever after with Yakanos, as we saw at the end of Ultimate Foe. There's one where she's been returned to Earth and she becomes a talk show host, and that's the old version of Perry we see in Perry and the Piscon Paradox. And there's another version of Perry that exists that we'll talk about later on. Also, Sixth Doctor has another companion during this period called Matthew Sharp. Matthew with one T and Sharp with an E. We don't actually see an adventure where the Sixth Doctor and Matthew first meet, but we see Lure of the Nomad, which is in the middle of their travels, or possibly the end. I don't know, I've not listened to it. So then, I would say this is possibly one of the most important events for the Sixth Doctor as a character. He meets history professor Evelyn Smythe, whose timeline, her time stream at the point when the Doctor meets her isn't exactly the most safe. She could be erased from time simply because one of her ancestors from Tudor times sort of might not be existing. So they travel back to the reign of Queen Mary, and yeah, I recommend The Marian Conspiracy, it's a good audio. Then there's a bunch of stories with Evelyn, including one with the Brigadier, and also one with President Romana. I've also put the Sirens of Time in somewhere here because it is said that it is set during this point, and there are Time Lords that are in Sirens of Time that were in the Apocalypse element, so there we go. Also, Project Twilight is an important story because it leads into the Forge arc, which is more prominent with the 7th Doctor, but has elements within it in the 6th Doctor's timeline. So Doctor and the Pirates, Real Time, and Project Lazarus are three very important stories for Doctor and Evelyn's relationship. 3 stories are important simply because people are dying and the Doctor is seemingly a little unfazed by it, and Evelyn is very fazed by it. Project Lazarus, one of the main characters, dies, and Evelyn's not very happy about it.
We have to go back for her.
Evelyn, I'm sorry. I don't always win.
No, you don't.
Now, shall I go and make us some cocoa? Is there any chocolate cake?
Oh, Doctor! You can't always make everything better with a cup of cocoa with the slice of cake.
Evelyn,
Cassie's dead! She isn't coming back!
Evelyn... Oh.
Real Time is also important because the 6th Doctor changes his coat from the multicoloured one to the blue one. So in Arrangements for War, Evelyn considers leaving the Doctor. By the end of Arrangements for War, she stays with the Doctor. She does meet the character of Governor Rossiter, who she falls in love with, and you can probably guess what happens, but it doesn't happen in Arrangements for War. And then they meet with like this dude who calls himself like Robert Knox in medicinal purposes, and then we've got a confusing little bit in 100 because My Own Private Wolfgang, that's where they meet Mozart, but they reference that story in 100 BC, and that story actually comes first in the anthology. Doesn't matter. And 100 Days of the Doctor is just a celebration of Big Finish as a whole at that point. But anyway, so they meet Thomas Brewster for a bit, and then at some point after that, Evelyn requests to go back to the planet in Arrangements for War, to see what happens, and she says to the Doctor bye, essentially, because she decides she will actually marry Rossiter. So after that, Evelyn's gone. Evelyn is gone. Also, the bits in Thicker and Water, those are flashbacks to a story that we haven't seen, but that's when Evelyn departs within those flashbacks. So after that, the Doctor finishes the last piece of chocolate cake before he's like, you know what, maybe I shall travel with Mel. So blue-coated Sixth Doctor decides to go and visit Mel in Pease Passage and actually confront her for the first time, but sees that his previous self kind of messed up because he sent Mel back to when they first met. So wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff gets fixed, and the Sixth Doctor doesn't leave with Mel, but changes his coat back to multicoloured to respect Mel. But it doesn't last long, because he's wearing blue when he's travelling with Charlie. Well, at least initially. He does change back into his multicoloured coat at some point during this time. But basically, Charlie is a companion of the Eighth Doctor, who, at the end of The Girl Who Never Was, runs into Sixth Doctor's TARDIS. Now, in The Condemned onwards, he's suspicious of Charlie simply because she's giving away a little hint where she's revealing who she really is. In Patient Zero, Charlie actually falls under a genetically engineered virus, which, long story short, she swaps minds with this character called Mila, and Mila travels with the Sixth Doctor but in Charlie's body, and the Sixth Doctor still thinks that it's Charlie. They swap back in paper cuts, however. Blue Forgotten Planet, the end of the Charlie trilogy, Charlie and Sixth Doctor trilogy and Big Finish, that basically, in that Charlie erases the Doctor's memory of her, but replaces it with a character called Mila, Mila being the person she swapped bodies with. And yeah, Charlie then goes off to work with the Virons and has her own spin-off. Does anyone want to talk about stage plays? The Ultimate Adventure is the thing, and I've put it here because the Big Finish adaptation exists, and I've listened to it. And yeah, the Doctor, with his newly found companion Jason, he gets summoned by the most scary woman that he's ever met, Mrs. T, who was clearly meant to be Margaret Thatcher, but they couldn't use a real person's name in the actual play. And through this adventure, the Doctor picks up a modern-day pop singer called Crystal, and this alien bar cleaner called Zog. Jason is from the French Revolution, and we actually see Jason get kidnapped while he's in the French Revolution, and he nearly gets guillotined. But yeah, there's also a short trip, a short trip in a short trip book, and there is also a companion chronicle based on these characters. Now, the reason why I'm placing this here and not in like the Third Doctor's timeline or an alternate Doctor's timeline is because the Sixth Doctor is the one that is in the adaptation, and there's more stories with the Sixth Doctor and those companions, so that's why I'm saying if these are canon, which I'm just going to assume they are because they are BBC officially licensed products, then yeah, I would say they are Sixth Doctor stories. Now, something that is less debatably canon, more like, yeah, this is canon, the Doctor travels with Jamie McCrimmon for 4 releases. It's a monthly range trilogy, but also a companion chronicle as well. But, spoiler alert for if you've not listened to these stories, this is all set in the land of fiction. So the Doctor escapes the land of fiction, and then goes to Victorian London and poses as Professor Claudius Dark, because Jago and Lightfoot are embroiled in this plot, in Series 4 of Jago and Lightfoot. And Claudius Dark is a shadowy figure that's manipulating events behind, well, all these events. He's not the main villain by any means, he's just someone manipulating events behind the scenes, even tipping off Leela about certain things. And basically, he then reveals that he is the Doctor to Jago and Lightfoot, and reveals that he can regenerate. And yeah, he reveals that in the Hourglass Killers, and then he invites them to travel in the TARDIS with him, which they oblige to do. And for 2 releases, that's what they do. But here's the thing. He accidentally leaves them in the 1960s instead of the 1890s. But Jago and Lightfoot will probably have their own video dedicated to their timeline at some point, maybe, possibly, I don't know. So the next companion the 6th Doctor finds himself with is a companion that was introduced in The Crimes of Thomas Brewster. Well, she's not a companion introduced in that, she's a character introduced in that who later became companion in The Curse of Davros. Philippa Jackson, also known as Flip. Now, the Doctor didn't expect to find a new companion so soon, so this may be right after the Jago and Lightfoot stuff. But yeah, he's travelling with Flip for a bit. Flip then becomes separated with the Doctor and Scavenger, where she's orbiting around the Earth in the year 2071. But the Doctor manages to save her and plops her off in 2012 Earth, so that she can get married to her boyfriend. But the Doctor's like, I wonder what Peri's getting up to. So we see another alternate Peri where King Eukarnos sort of got killed 7 days after they were married, simply because of this Mandrake thing. So yeah, we just have a few stories of older Peri, and older Peri just wants to leave. So yeah, I've placed more Jago and Lightfoot stuff here because it doesn't really work placing it with the other Jago and Lightfoot stuff, and I guess this bit looked a little too empty, so that's why I put his appearance in Jago and Lightfoot Series 4 and Jago and Lightfoot Forever in here. So then the Doctor travels to 1940s Earth, and he meets this Wren called Constance Clark. They travel for a bit, and then in the Audio Quicksilver, Flip joins them. And then they travel for a bit, and we've not got a resolution to that yet. The latest audio, they were both in static, so there we go. Now, the Doctor meets Mel properly in Business Unusual. And then we've got quite a few stories. We've got Terror of the Vervoids finally, and I would say around about then is when Mel gets sent back to trial the Time Lord. And yeah, there's not much here that I can actually touch upon. But now we've got the regeneration. There's more than one account. So let's start with the first account, that being Time in the Rani, and well, Time in the Rani novelization, where the 7th Doctor just kills the 6th Doctor in his own head, so they regenerate. Spiral Scratch, infamous, knocking his head over the console, and the end of the line in the 6th Doctor: The Last Adventure, I would say, is the story which I would say Spiral Scratch happening around here. Yeah, the main bulk of that story happens around here, but End of the Line has the proper regeneration, because that's better regeneration and it just makes more sense and it does the 6th Doctor justice. And he regenerates by purposely going into this radiated area in space, which is non-lethal to humans, it just knocks them out, but is lethal to Time Lords, which causes him to regenerate. And he only does this to escape the Valiard. It's explained how in the story, just get the last adventure. So that does it for the 6th Doctor's timeline. I hope you found this interesting, or I hope this new layout of timeline videos is adequate for you. I hope it looks good. Special shout out to @TheHorizonTries on Twitter, You've been a huge help, Charlie, and ironically enough, she helped me on the Charlie era, so there we go. You've been a huge help. Thanks all of you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed Colin Month, and I will see you all next time. Cheerio.